Okay. Judges are ready. All right, Evie, you may begin.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
My name's Evie Martell, and I'm from York County. And today I'm going to talk about teaching failure through the engineering design process. So first, what is failure? We all kind of know what failure is, right? But I wanted to define it for this presentation. So for my presentation, failure is when you try to accomplish a goal and don't get the intended results. Vincent van Gogh, one of the most famous painters of our day, is a really good example of failure. He didn't actually achieve fame until after he had already died. And while he was alive, he tried being a bookstore clerk, an art salesman, and a preacher, and failed at all of these careers. So now I get to talk about my favorite thing that I've ever done, which was getting to run a middle school science club last year. It was a club for juniors where we got together once a month to do hands-on science experiments like building rockets or making houses for penguins. And in the very beginning of my club, a lot of the kids were afraid of getting things wrong. They were afraid of trying new things because they weren't sure if it was going to turn out right. But by the end of the club, the kids were so much more open to failure. And these kids were great, y'all. They had me convinced at the end of every meeting that I should be a middle school teacher. No. And then I would remember what I was like in middle school, and I would quickly decide that that was a bad idea. I did decide, though, that I want to be a museum curator so that I can make programs for kids. Failure is hard. We all know that. I think we've all failed in this room. Can you raise your hand if you have failed at something? I think there are some people in the back who might be telling a story. But failure is hard, right? It can make you feel bad or less smart. It's like if I did really badly on a test, but my best friend got like all perfect scores, then I might feel bad about myself. There's a lot of social pressure to not fail at things, especially in a school setting where the expectation is that you're going to do well. And also with our physical projects and our science clubs, there's a fear of getting in trouble or messing things up, like you might accidentally break something or something would go wrong. But kids really need to learn to fail, because it's a skill that you can take into adulthood and your future careers that will help you be better. Learning to fail teaches you to deal with discouragement and negative emotions. Failing teaches problem solving. And failure isn't always necessarily bad. Like, we've got this really funny poem that I'm standing in front of by Shel Silverstein. The little girl fails to dry the dishes, but then she doesn't have to dry the dishes anymore. But we don't want our kids to learn to fail and then to just give up. We want them to learn to fail and then try again. So that's where the engineering design process comes in. The engineering design process is a 7-step process that engineers and all of us can use to think about problems. It starts with asking a question. What do we want to do? Then we research our question. We imagine possible solutions. We plan our solution. We create a prototype. We test our prototype. And then we improve our prototype. So right here, in between testing and improving, is a built-in spot where we are supposed to fail. So, why is the engineering design process helpful? The engineering design process teaches us to fail forward and to fail fast. Like I said, we go back to improving. When we improve, we go back to the step of ask. But our question is now, why did we fail? So it teaches us to fail and then get back up, and it teaches us to fail fast. I was on a rocket team for 3 years where we would make model rockets to go into competition. And our rockets for the competitions were about this tall, like from here to the floor, and were very big and expensive affairs. But our first rockets weren't that big or that expensive. They were very small to make sure that whatever we were going to do on the big one worked. And then there's also the concept of testing to the breaking point. So, we have been doing practices for the State Engineering Challenge, and one of my bridge building teams gave me this so that I could come and brag on them a little bit, because they're absolutely amazing. So this is one of the bridges that we use for a competition. In the competition, you have to make a truss-style bridge out of popsicle sticks that's 13 inches long and can hold a bucket and weight in the bucket. and whichever bridge holds the most weight wins the competition. So we could just, to test this, we could just put 10 pounds on it, and if it holds 10 pounds, say, great, that's good. But we don't just put 10 pounds on it, because we want to know how much it can hold. So we put more weight in until it breaks, because that's the maximum. And like my grandma says, who's a very smart lady, if you never fail, you're not challenging yourself. So, what do we as educators, student leaders, parents, and teachers need to do to help kids learn to fail? We just need to give them the room to mess up. For a lot of us, it's our instinct to want to get in there and help them do it right the first time. We want to save the kids from the negative feelings that can come with failing at something. But that's actually going to stop their growth in the long run. So just giving them the room to mess up safely. We also need to encourage their growth. It's really easy to fail at something. I'm sure we've all done this. You failed at something, and then you decided that you never ever want to do it again. Has anybody done that? Raise your hand if you have. Yep. So just encouraging our kids to get back on it and try again is really important for us to do. And also, we need to accept that our progress isn't always going to be linear. Sometimes you do something, and it's kind of okay the first time, and the second time, it is really, really bad. And the third time, you do it a lot more like the first time, and it's a little bit better than it was. We also need to help identify failure points. As adults, a lot of times, we're the educators. We know what the kids needed to do, and we can help them see where whatever they designed failed. But sometimes failure isn't an option, and this slide is mainly just an excuse for me to get to talk about the Apollo 13 moon landing mission. So failure is not an option is a quote that's associated with the mission, but was actually made up later for a documentary, but I could go on about that. That's a whole different presentation. But it was a failed moon landing mission. There were 3 people on the mission when a system failed, and so there were just 3 guys stuck out in space. And NASA worked really hard for quite a while to get them back down to Earth safely, and they were all safely recovered. So sometimes somebody's safety is at risk, and we can't just let them fail. So, in conclusion, kids need to learn how to fail because it will help with their future careers, help kids deal better with negative emotions, and help kids have better problem-solving skills. And educators can use the engineering design process to teach failure by helping identify failure points and letting kids fail on their own. So here are my sources. I've got a source about how to teach the engineering design process, a source about how to help kids learn to fail, and then the sources that I got my pictures from. Thank you all so much for your time. Do you have any questions?
Are you yourself competing in engineering, Sean?